The thing about anniversaries is that they're supposed to celebrate something worth remembering. Sitting across from my wife Sabrina at Meridian's rooftop restaurant, watching her flirt with her ex-boyfriend Rex while I picked at my overpriced salmon, I realized our marriage had become something I'd rather forget. "Elliot, you remember Rex Mallory, don't you?" Sabrina's voice dripped with false sweetness as she gestured to the broad-shouldered man who'd somehow materialized at our table. I thought it would be fun to have him join us for dessert. Fun. Right. About as fun as a root canal performed with a rusty spoon. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Of course, I remember Rex. I set down my fork and extended my hand, which he shook with the grip of someone trying to prove something. Financial consultant, wasn't it? Or was that just what you told the IRS? Rex's smile faltered for a microsecond before returning full force. Still the comedian, I see. Sabrina always said you had quite the sense of humor. Among other things, Sabrina said, her eyes never leaving Rex's face. Rex was just telling me about his new condo downtown, the penthouse with the incredible view. I nodded politely while my investigator's mind cataloged details. Rex's watch was a Rolex Submariner, 40,000 minimum. His suit was custom-tailored, probably Italian. Either business was very good, or Rex had found alternative income streams. Sounds impressive, I said. Must keep you busy, all that consulting. Oh, you know how it is in finance. Always something happening after hours. Rex leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. Speaking of which, Sabrina mentioned you're still doing that private investigation thing. Must be challenging in a city this size. The way he said thing made it sound like a hobby I'd picked up to pass time. I'd been running grant investigations for 5 years, building a solid reputation among divorce lawyers and insurance companies. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and used skills I'd developed during my journalism days. It has its moments, I replied. You'd be surprised what people try to hide in broad daylight. Sabrina laughed, a sound like ice cubes clinking in an empty glass. Elliot's always been suspicious of everyone. Occupational hazard, I suppose? Occupational necessity, I corrected. Amazing what you learn when you actually pay attention to details. Our server appeared with the dessert menu, giving me a moment to study my wife and her ex. They sat closer than necessary, their body language screaming intimacy. Sabrina wore the diamond earrings I'd given her last Christmas, but her attention was entirely focused on Rex. She touched his arm when she laughed, leaned in when he spoke, and generally acted like I wasn't there. After 12 years of marriage, I'd grown accustomed to Sabrina's coldness. She was a successful PR executive, ambitious and image-conscious, always networking and climbing social ladders. But this public humiliation felt different, deliberate, calculated. I think I'll skip dessert, I announced, signaling for the check. Early morning tomorrow. Oh, don't be such a spoilsport, Sabrina pouted. It's our anniversary. Besides, Rex has some fascinating stories about his recent trip to the Cayman Islands. I'll bet he does, I thought. The Caymans were popular with people who had money they preferred to keep private. Another time, perhaps. I'm sure Rex has plenty of opportunities to share his travel stories. As I paid the check, naturally Rex made no move toward his wallet. I caught sight of Erin Walsh hovering near the bar. Sabrina's best friend and constant shadow, Erin was the kind of woman who collected gossip like some people collected stamps. Her presence here wasn't coincidental. Wonderful seeing you again, Elliot, Rex said as we prepared to leave. We should do this more often. Absolutely, I replied. I'll have my people call your people. In the elevator down, Sabrina was unusually quiet. She stared at her reflection in the polished steel doors, adjusting her hair and smoothing her dress. At 45 stories up, we had plenty of time for conversation, but she seemed lost in thought. Enjoy your evening? I asked. It was nice seeing old friends, she said carefully. Rex has done very well for himself. So it seems. Funny how some people's fortunes change so dramatically. She shot me a sharp look. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing specific, just an observation about life's unexpected turns. The elevator reached the parking garage, and we walked to our respective cars in silence. Sabrina drove a BMW sedan, practical but expensive, like everything else in her life. I preferred my aging Honda Civic, reliable, unremarkable, and perfect for surveillance work. I'll see you at home, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Sure thing, drive carefully. As I watched her taillights disappear up the ramp, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Jonas McCree answered on the second ring. Jonesy, it's Elliot. You still working tonight? Until 2 a.m., same as always. What's up? I need to buy you a drink and pick your brain about something. Sounds serious. The usual place? 20 minutes. I started the Honda and headed toward downtown, my mind already working through possibilities. 12 years of marriage had taught me to read Sabrina's moods and motivations. Tonight felt like the beginning of something, not the end. And if my instincts were correct, I needed to start preparing for whatever came next. The city lights blurred past my windshield as I drove through the familiar streets. In my rearview mirror, I could see the Meridian Building's rooftop restaurant, still glowing against the night sky. Our anniversary dinner was over, but I had the distinct feeling the real celebration was just beginning. Murphy's Tavern occupied a narrow slice of real estate between a dry cleaner and a used bookstore, the kind of place that survived on loyalty rather than location. Jonas McCree had managed the bar for 8 years, which in the hospitality business made him practically ancient. More importantly, he heard everything and remembered most of it. I found him polishing glasses behind the mahogany bar, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms covered in faded tattoos from his Navy days. At 42, Jonesy had the weathered look of someone who'd seen enough of life's darker corners to appreciate the simple pleasures of steady work and honest conversation. "You look like someone who just watched his dog get hit by a truck," he said, setting down a clean pint glass. "What's the damage?" I slid onto a bar stool and loosened my tie. Sabrina introduced me to her ex-boyfriend tonight, at our anniversary dinner. Ouch. That's cold, even for her. Jonesy poured 2 fingers of bourbon without being asked. "Rex Mallory, right? Big guy? Thinks he's God's gift to women and finance? You know him?" "He comes in here sometimes with his business associates, uses the back booth, orders expensive scotch, and talks too loud about deals that sound questionable at best." Jonesy leaned against the bar. "What's your read on the situation?" I took a sip of bourbon, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. Either Sabrina's having an affair, planning to have one, or already had one and decided to rub my nose in it. Given her personality, I'm leaning toward option 3. "What's your next move?" "Information gathering. Rex struck me as the type who cuts corners and bends rules. If he's dirty, I'll find out how dirty." Jonesy nodded approvingly. "Want some free intelligence to get you started?" "Always." Rex has been meeting with Tommy Castellano twice a month for the past 6 months. Always the same routine. Tommy comes in first, orders a beer, sits in the back booth. Rex shows up 10 minutes later with a briefcase. They talk for maybe 20 minutes, then leave separately. I set down my glass. Tommy Castellano ran a construction company that specialized in city contracts. He also had connections to people who preferred cash transactions and flexible accounting practices. Anything else? Rex always pays in hundreds, never uses a credit card, and tips exactly 15%. The kind of guy who counts every penny but wants everyone to think money doesn't matter to him. Personality profile? Arrogant, insecure, and probably smarter than he acts, but not as smart as he thinks. Classic narcissist with impulse control issues. Jonesy refilled my glass. The kind of guy who'd steal your wife just to prove he could, then get bored and move on to the next challenge. That assessment aligned with my own observations. Rex had the confidence of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted, but also the restlessness of someone never satisfied with what he had. "I need to know more about his business dealings," I said. "Financial records, client lists, anything that might explain where his money comes from. Legal or illegal research methods." "Let's start with legal and see where that leads." Jonesy grinned. "You always were the careful type. Good thing, considering your line of work." I finished my bourbon and left a 20 on the bar. "Thanks for the intelligence briefing. I owe you one." "You owe me several, but who's counting?" The drive home took me through the residential district where Sabrina and I had lived for the past 7 years. Our house was a modest colonial with good bones and a mortgage that would outlive us both. Sabrina had wanted something larger, more prestigious, but my income from the investigation business had practical limits. The house was dark when I arrived, which meant Sabrina had either gone to bed early or hadn't come home yet. Given the evening's events, I suspected the latter. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, studying our home's familiar silhouette against the night sky. 12 years of marriage had accumulated a lot of shared history within those walls. Wedding photos on the mantel, furniture we'd chosen together, books we'd both read and discussed. But somewhere along the way, we'd stopped building a life together and started simply occupying the same space. Inside, I poured myself a glass of water and checked the answering machine. No messages. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, noting that Sabrina's side of the bed remained untouched. Her evening purse wasn't on the dresser where she usually left it, and her car keys weren't in the ceramic bowl by the front door. I changed into jeans and a t-shirt, then went to my home office and powered up my computer. If Rex Mallory had secrets, they'd leave traces in public records, business filings, and financial documents. Finding those traces was what I did for a living. The Secretary of State's website yielded basic information about Rex's consulting firm, Mallory Financial Services, incorporated 3 years ago, registered address matching a downtown office building I recognized. Annual reports showed steady growth, but the numbers felt too clean, too consistent for a legitimate consulting business. Cross-referencing the business address revealed 12 other companies registered at the same location, most with similar vague names like Strategic Solutions LLC and Premier Advisory Group. Classic shell company territory. I spent 2 hours building a preliminary profile, making notes and printing relevant documents. Rex's business empire was small but complex, with multiple entities and carefully structured relationships. The kind of setup that made sense if you needed to move money around without attracting attention. At midnight, I heard Sabrina's car in the driveway. I saved my work and closed the browser, then listened as she entered the house. Her heels clicked across the hardwood floor, paused in the kitchen, then continued upstairs. She appeared in the office doorway, still wearing her anniversary dinner outfit, but with her hair slightly mussed and her lipstick gone. "Working late?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd catch up on some case files." She nodded, studying my face as if trying to read my thoughts. "About tonight. I hope you weren't uncomfortable with Rex joining us." "Why would I be uncomfortable? It's always nice to meet your friends." "He's not exactly a friend. More like someone I knew before we got married." "I see. And now?" "Now he's someone I occasionally run into at professional events. The PR world and finance world overlap sometimes." It was a reasonable explanation, delivered with Sabrina's usual composure. It was also complete bullshit, but I wasn't ready to call her on it yet. "Well, he seems to be doing well for himself," I said. "Success suits him." "Yes, he's always been ambitious." She shifted her weight, suddenly seeming tired. "I'm going to bed. Don't stay up too late." "I'll be up soon." After she left, I sat in the quiet office, thinking about the evening's events and the information I'd gathered. Rex Mallory was dirty. The only question was how dirty and whether I could prove it. More importantly, I needed to understand what role Sabrina played in whatever was developing between them. I opened a new document file and began typing notes, organizing my thoughts and planning next steps. If my marriage was ending, I wanted to understand why and how. If Sabrina was planning something that would affect our finances or my business, I needed to know about it in advance. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet except for the occasional car passing on the main road. Inside, I could hear water running as Sabrina prepared for bed, following routines we'd established over 12 years of shared domesticity. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the beginning of the end of something, and possibly the start of something else entirely. I saved my notes, turned off the computer, and headed upstairs to what might be one of the last nights I'd sleep in my own bed as a married man. The next morning, Sabrina left for work without her usual goodbye kiss, claiming an early meeting with an important client. I watched from the kitchen window as she backed out of the driveway, noting that she'd taken extra care with her appearance. Fresh manicure, new blouse, and the perfume she usually reserved for special occasions. My first stop was the downtown office building where Rex's consulting firm was registered. The Hartwell building was one of those anonymous glass towers that housed accountants, lawyers, and various businesses that preferred discretion over visibility. The directory in the lobby confirmed that Mallory Financial Services occupied Suite 1247. I took the elevator to the 12th floor and walked past Rex's office, noting the modest nameplate and frosted glass door. Through the glass, I could see the silhouette of someone moving around inside, but couldn't make out details. The hallway was quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights and distant telephone conversations. Rather than risk a direct encounter, I continued to the building's management office on the ground floor. The property manager, a tired-looking woman named Carol Stevens, was happy to discuss tenant information in exchange for the story that I was conducting a background check for a potential business partner. "Mr. Mallory's been a model tenant," she said, consulting her files. "Always pays rent on time, no complaints from other tenants, keeps regular business hours." "How long has he been here?" 3 years next month. Signed a 5-year lease, put down first and last month's rent plus security deposit in cash." That caught my attention. Most legitimate businesses paid commercial rent by check or bank transfer. Cash payments suggested either exceptional liquidity or a desire to avoid paper trails. "Does he have many visitors?" "Some, but not excessive. Mostly well-dressed business types." "Oh, and there was that incident last month with the woman who caused a scene in the lobby?" "What kind of scene?" Carol glanced around to make sure we weren't overheard. She was yelling about money he owed her, threatening to call the police. Security had to escort her out. Blonde woman, very upset, claimed he'd stolen from her. I made a mental note to follow up on that lead. Did you get her name? No, but she left this behind. Carol produced a business card from her desk drawer. I kept meaning to mail it back to her. The card belonged to Jennifer Walsh, certified public accountant. The surname caught my attention. Walsh was Erin's married name. I pocketed the card and thanked Carol for her time. Back at my office, I ran Jennifer Walsh through various databases. She was Erin's sister-in-law, married to Erin's brother David. Her CPA firm specialized in small business accounting and tax preparation. More interestingly, she'd filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau against Mallory Financial Services 6 weeks ago, alleging fraudulent business practices and misrepresentation of services. I called Jennifer's office and arranged to meet her that afternoon, claiming to be investigating Rex for a potential client. She agreed immediately, which suggested she had plenty to say about her experiences with him. Jennifer Walsh's office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a sandwich shop, the kind of location that prioritized affordability over prestige. She was a small, intense woman in her mid-30s, with the focused energy of someone who'd been burned and wanted revenge. Rex Mallory is a con artist, she said without preamble. Smooth, charming, and completely without conscience. What exactly did he do? He approached me about handling accounting for several of his clients, claimed he was expanding his business and needed someone trustworthy to manage the books. The retainer was generous, the clients seemed legitimate, and the work appeared straightforward. But it wasn't. The clients were real, but the money wasn't. Rex was running a classic Ponzi scheme, using new investor money to pay returns to existing investors, skimming fees off the top, and keeping multiple sets of books to hide the fraud. I leaned forward. How did you find out? One of the investors called me directly, asking about discrepancies in his statements. When I started digging, nothing added up. Rex had been showing investors fake returns while their actual money disappeared into various shell companies. Did you go to the police? I tried, but Rex was smart about it. He structured everything so that I looked like the accountant who'd made the mistakes. By the time I realized what was happening, he'd already started distancing himself from the operation and setting me up as the fall guy. Jennifer pulled out a thick folder and spread documents across her desk. Bank statements, investment reports, and correspondence painted a picture of systematic fraud disguised as legitimate financial consulting. How much money are we talking about? At least $2 million that I could trace, probably more. Rex was very good at compartmentalizing information so that no single person could see the whole operation. I studied the documents, noting names and amounts. Several investors had lost their entire retirement savings, trusting Rex's promises of guaranteed returns and insider knowledge. Are you willing to testify about this if it comes to that? Absolutely. Rex destroyed my reputation and nearly cost me my license. I want him stopped before he hurts more people. I left Jennifer's office with copies of her documentation and a clearer picture of Rex's criminal activities. He wasn't just a successful consultant. He was a sophisticated con artist who specialized in financial fraud. The question now was whether Sabrina knew about his illegal activities, and if so, how deeply she was involved. That evening, I followed Sabrina from her office to a wine bar in the trendy arts district. She arrived first and chose a corner table with good sightlines, the kind of spot someone would pick for a private conversation. Rex appeared 10 minutes later, carrying a manila envelope and wearing the confident smile of a man who believed he was winning. From my position at the bar, I could observe their interaction without being noticed. They sat close together, heads bent over the contents of the envelope. Sabrina's body language was animated, engaged, occasionally touching Rex's hand for emphasis. This wasn't a casual encounter between old friends. It was a business meeting between co-conspirators. I managed to capture several photos with my phone's camera, documenting their meeting for future reference. When they left separately, Sabrina first, then Rex 5 minutes later, I followed Rex to his downtown condo building. The Pinnacle was one of those luxury high-rises that catered to young professionals with more money than sense. Rex's penthouse unit would cost at least $5,000 a month, far more than a legitimate consulting business could support unless it was extraordinarily successful. I parked across the street and called Jonesy. I need a favor, I said when he answered. Can you find out if Rex Mallory has been spending money at jewelry stores or expensive restaurants lately? Give me a couple days. I know people who know people. Thanks. And Jonesy? Be discreet about this. I don't want word getting back to Rex that someone's asking questions. Understood. You think he's planning something big? I think he's already doing something big, and my wife might be part of it. After ending the call, I sat in my car watching Rex's building and thinking about the day's discoveries. Rex was a criminal, Sabrina was meeting with him secretly, and Jennifer Walsh had evidence of systematic fraud. The pieces were starting to form a pattern, but I needed more information before taking action. My phone buzzed with a text message from Sabrina. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I smiled grimly and started the Honda. If Sabrina wanted to play games, I was ready to play along, but she was about to discover that private investigators had certain advantages when it came to uncovering secrets and documenting lies. The game was just beginning, and I intended to win. 3 days later, Jonesy called with information that confirmed my worst suspicions. Rex had purchased a $15,000 diamond bracelet from Morrison's Jewelry 2 weeks ago, paid for expensive dinners at 4 different restaurants over the past month, and booked a weekend getaway to a luxury resort in the mountains. The jewelry store clerk remembered him because he paid cash and seemed very particular about the gift wrapping, Jonesy reported. Said he wanted something that would make a married woman feel special. "Did you get a description of the bracelet?" "Diamond tennis bracelet, white gold setting, custom engraving on the clasp." I thanked Jonesy and hung up, then went upstairs to search Sabrina's jewelry box. Hidden beneath her everyday pieces, wrapped in tissue paper, I found the bracelet. The engraving read, "To New Beginnings, R." The evidence was overwhelming now. Sabrina was having an affair with Rex, accepting expensive gifts, and participating in whatever scheme they were planning together. But I needed to understand the full scope of their relationship before deciding how to respond. That afternoon, I installed a small recording device in Sabrina's car while she was at work. The device was voice-activated and would capture any conversations she had while driving. It wasn't admissible in court, but it would give me the intelligence I needed to plan my next moves. The recording device paid off sooner than expected. The next morning, it captured a phone conversation between Sabrina and Rex that revealed the true nature of their relationship. "The timing has to be perfect," Sabrina's voice said. "Elliot's been suspicious lately, asking questions about your business." "Don't worry about your husband," Rex replied. "By the time he figures out what's happening, we'll be long gone with everything we need." "You're sure about the offshore accounts?" "Completely secure. Once we transfer the money, it'll be untouchable. Your husband's investigation business will provide perfect cover for the initial transactions." My blood ran cold as I listened to them discuss using my business as a front for money laundering. They were planning to steal from Rex's investors, frame me for financial crimes, and disappear together with millions of dollars. "What about Erin?" Sabrina asked. "She's been asking too many questions about our meetings." "Erin's useful for now, but she doesn't know anything that could hurt us. If she becomes a problem, we'll handle it." The recording continued for another 10 minutes, revealing details about bank accounts, travel plans, and the timeline for their escape. They were planning to execute their scheme within the next 2 weeks, right before Rex's Ponzi scheme collapsed and investigators started looking for missing money. I sat in my office, listening to my wife casually discuss destroying my life and career, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Sabrina hadn't just betrayed our marriage, she'd betrayed everything I'd worked to build over the past 5 years. But she'd also made a critical mistake. By involving my business in their scheme, she'd given me legal standing to pursue criminal charges and civil remedies. More importantly, she'd underestimated my ability to gather evidence and build a case against them. I spent the rest of the day copying files, securing assets, and preparing for war. If Sabrina and Rex wanted to play dirty, I was ready to show them what dirty really looked like. That evening, I confronted Erin at her favorite coffee shop. She was sitting alone, scrolling through her phone, when I slid into the seat across from her. "Hello, Erin. We need to talk." She looked up, startled. "Elliot, what are you doing here?" "Learning about friendship and loyalty. Interesting concepts, don't you think?" Her face went pale. "I don't know what you mean." I placed a printed transcript of Sabrina and Rex's recorded conversation on the table between us. "This is what I mean. Your best friend is planning to destroy my life, and you've been helping her do it." Erin's hands shook as she read the transcript. "I didn't know about any of this. Sabrina just said she was unhappy in your marriage and needed someone to talk to." "Really? Because according to this conversation, you've been asking questions about their meetings. That suggests you knew something was going on." "I suspected she was having an affair, but I didn't know about the money or the business stuff." Erin's voice was barely above a whisper. "She's my best friend. I was trying to protect her." "From what?" "From making a mistake that would ruin her life." I leaned back in my chair, studying Erin's face. She was scared, which meant she was telling the truth about not knowing the full scope of Sabrina and Rex's scheme, but she was also weak, which made her useful. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to help me stop them, or you're going to go down with them when the FBI starts investigating Rex's financial crimes." "The FBI?" "Rex Mallory is running a Ponzi scheme that's stolen millions of dollars from investors. When it collapses, and it will collapse very soon, everyone connected to him will be investigated. That includes Sabrina, and it includes you." Erin buried her face in her hands. "Oh, God, what have I done?" "Nothing that can't be fixed if you're smart about it, but you need to decide right now whose side you're on." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to arrange a meeting with Sabrina and Rex. Tell them you're worried about the risks they're taking and want to discuss the situation. Make it somewhere public, but not too crowded." "When?" "Tomorrow night. And Erin, if you warn them about this conversation, I'll make sure the FBI knows about every text message, phone call, and meeting you've had with them over the past 6 months." She nodded miserably. "I'll set it up." I left the coffee shop feeling like I'd just lit a fuse on a very large bomb. Tomorrow night, Sabrina and Rex would discover that their carefully planned scheme was about to explode in their faces, and I would be there to watch it happen. The next 24 hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. I used the time to finalize my preparations, consulting with my lawyer about asset protection and discussing the situation with Detective Ray Vance, an old contact from my journalism days. "You've got enough evidence for fraud charges," Vance told me after reviewing my documentation. "The recorded conversation about using your business for money laundering gives us conspiracy charges, too. When do you want to move on this?" "Tomorrow night, after I confront them. I want them to know exactly why their lives are about to fall apart." Vance nodded approvingly. "Personal satisfaction and justice. I can respect that." At 8 o'clock the next evening, I arrived at Meridian's rooftop restaurant, the same place where this whole mess had started. Erin had arranged for us to meet in a private dining room, claiming she wanted to discuss Sabrina's situation without being overheard. Sabrina and Rex were already there when I walked in, sitting close together and sharing a bottle of expensive wine. They looked up in surprise when they saw me instead of Erin. "Where's Erin?" Sabrina demanded. "Parking the car," I lied, taking a seat across from them. "She'll be up in a minute." Rex frowned. "What's this about, Elliot? Erin said there was some kind of emergency." "There is. You're both under investigation by the FBI for financial fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering." The color drained from Sabrina's face. Rex tried to maintain his composure, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "That's ridiculous," Rex said. "I run a legitimate consulting business." "No, you run a Ponzi scheme that's stolen over $2 million from investors, and my wife has been helping you plan to use my business as a front for laundering the proceeds." I placed the transcript of their recorded conversation on the table. "This is you two discussing how to frame me for your crimes while you disappear with the money." Sabrina grabbed the papers and read quickly, her face growing paler with each line. "How did you get this?" "I'm a private investigator, Sabrina. It's what I do for a living. Uncover secrets and document evidence. Did you really think I wouldn't notice my own wife plotting to destroy me?" Rex stood up abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this." "Yes, you do, because in about 10 minutes, Detective Vance and his team are going to arrest you both. Your only choice now is whether you want to cooperate or spend the next 20 years in federal prison." "You bastard," Sabrina hissed. "You set us up." "No, I caught you. There's a difference." Rex was looking around the room like a trapped animal. "This is entrapment. You can't use illegally obtained recordings in court." "You're right. The recordings aren't admissible. But they led me to evidence that is admissible. Bank records, witness statements, documentation of your fraud scheme, and proof that you were planning to use my business for money laundering." I stood up and straightened my tie. "Jennifer Walsh sends her regards, by the way. She's very much looking forward to testifying about your business practices." As if on cue, Detective Vance and 2 uniformed officers entered the dining room. "Rex Mallory, Sabrina Grant, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and money laundering." The next few minutes were a blur of Miranda rights, handcuffs, and shocked protests. Sabrina kept looking at me as if she couldn't believe what was happening, while Rex maintained his innocence even as the officers led him away. When the room was finally quiet, I sat alone at the table where my marriage had effectively ended 1 week earlier. The expensive wine was still there, along with the transcript that had sealed their fate. I pulled out my phone and called Jonesy. "It's over. They're both in custody." "How do you feel?" I considered the question carefully. Like someone who just won a war he never wanted to fight. "What's next?" "Divorce proceedings, asset recovery, and rebuilding my life. In that order." I left the restaurant and walked out into the cool evening air, feeling lighter than I had in months. Sabrina and Rex had gambled everything on their scheme, and they'd lost. More importantly, they'd learned that betraying someone who made a living uncovering secrets was a very dangerous game to play. The city lights sparkled below as I headed home to a house that would soon be mine alone. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, paperwork, and the long process of untangling 12 years of marriage. But tonight, justice had been served, and that was enough. The courthouse steps were slick with morning rain as I climbed toward the entrance, briefcase in hand and a sense of grim satisfaction in my chest. 6 months had passed since Sabrina and Rex's arrest, and today was the final hearing in their criminal case. It was also the day I would learn exactly how much of my life I could salvage from the wreckage of their betrayal. Detective Vance met me in the hallway outside the courtroom, looking pleased with himself. "Morning, Elliot. Ready for the grand finale?" "More than ready. What's the latest?" "Rex took a plea deal yesterday. 15 years federal time in exchange for full cooperation and asset forfeiture. He's already given us account numbers for 3 offshore banks and a list of co-conspirators in 2 other states." "And Sabrina?" Still maintaining her innocence, claiming she was manipulated by Rex and didn't understand the scope of his criminal activities. Vance shook his head. "Her lawyer's pushing for a reduced sentence based on cooperation, but the recorded conversations make it pretty clear she knew exactly what she was doing." Inside the courtroom, I took a seat in the gallery and watched as Sabrina was led to the defendant's table. She'd lost weight during her months in custody, and her usually perfect hair and makeup showed the strain of incarceration. When she saw me, her expression hardened into something between hatred and desperation. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Patricia Morrison, reviewed the case files before addressing the court. "Ms. Grant, you've been found guilty of conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and attempted theft of marital assets. Before I pronounce sentence, do you have anything to say?" Sabrina stood up, her hands shaking slightly. "Your Honor, I made terrible mistakes, but I never intended for anyone to get hurt. I was lonely in my marriage and vulnerable to Rex Mallory's manipulation. I asked for mercy and the chance to make amends for my actions." It was a carefully crafted statement designed to minimize her responsibility while playing for sympathy. Unfortunately for Sabrina, Judge Morrison had heard similar speeches from dozens of white-collar criminals over the years. "Ms. Grant, the evidence shows that you actively participated in planning and executing a scheme that would have defrauded investors of millions of dollars while destroying your husband's business and reputation. Your recorded conversations demonstrate clear intent and understanding of the criminal nature of your actions." The judge paused, consulting her notes. "I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You are also ordered to pay full restitution to the victims of Mr. Mallory's Ponzi scheme, jointly and severally liable for all losses." Sabrina's knees buckled, and her lawyer had to steady her as the reality of 8 years in prison sank in. She turned to look at me one final time, her face a mask of rage and despair, before the bailiff led her away. Outside the courthouse, I stood in the rain for a moment, processing the end of a chapter that had consumed my life for the past 6 months. Justice had been served, but it felt hollow somehow. 12 years of marriage had ended with my wife in handcuffs, and no amount of legal vindication could change that fundamental sadness. My phone buzzed with a text from Jonesy. "Drinks tonight to celebrate?" I typed back, "Absolutely, I'm buying." The drive back to my office took me through the downtown district where Rex's luxury condo had been seized by federal marshals. The building looked the same, but I knew his penthouse was now empty, all his possessions sold at auction to compensate his victims. Justice could be poetic sometimes. At Grant Investigations, I found a stack of messages from potential clients who'd read about the case in the newspapers. Apparently, exposing a major financial fraud scheme was excellent advertising for a private investigation business. My secretary, Maria Santos, looked pleased as she handed me the phone slips. 3 divorce cases, 2 insurance fraud investigations, and 1 corporate background check, she reported. Plus a reporter from the Chronicle wants to interview you about white-collar crime detection. Schedule the clients for next week. I'll think about the interview. I spent the afternoon returning calls and organizing case files, trying to get back into the routine of normal business operations. The past 6 months had been consumed by criminal proceedings, divorce paperwork, and rebuilding my personal life. Now I could focus on the future instead of constantly looking over my shoulder at the past. At 6 o'clock, I met Jonesy at Murphy's Tavern for what had become our regular post-crisis debriefing session. He'd already secured our usual spot at the bar and ordered my bourbon. "So how does it feel to be officially divorced and vindicated?" he asked as I settled onto the bar stool. "Expensive but satisfying. The divorce settlement gave me the house and my business assets, but I'm still paying lawyers and accountants to untangle the financial mess." "What about the restitution payments?" "Sabrina and Rex are jointly liable for about $3 million in victim compensation. Since Rex's assets only covered half of that, she'll be making payments for the rest of her life." I took a sip of bourbon. Ah, assuming she can find work with a felony fraud conviction on her record. Jonesy nodded approvingly. Poetic justice. She tried to steal your future, so now you own hers. Something like that. We drank in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the evening crowd filter in. Murphy's hadn't changed. Same scratched bar, same faded photographs on the walls, same mix of regulars and newcomers looking for an honest drink in an honest place. You know what the best part is? I said finally. What's that? Rex thought he was so much smarter than everyone else. He had the perfect con, the perfect cover story, and the perfect accomplice. But he made one critical mistake. Which was? He underestimated his mark. He saw a middle-aged private investigator with a failing marriage and thought I'd be easy to manipulate and destroy. I raised my glass in a mock toast. Turns out I was better at his game than he was. Jonesy clinked his glass against mine. Here's to knowing your enemy better than they know themselves. And here's to friends who help you bury the bodies. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Of course. As the evening wore on, I found myself thinking about the future for the first time in months. At 42, I was starting over with a successful business, a paid-off house, and hard-won wisdom about trust and betrayal. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was honest, and it was mine. My phone rang around 9 o'clock. The caller ID showed Jennifer Walsh's number. Elliot, I just heard about the sentencing. How are you holding up? Better than expected. Justice was served, and I can finally move on with my life. I wanted to thank you again for everything you did. Without your investigation, Rex would still be stealing from people and destroying lives. We made a good team. Your documentation was crucial to building the case. Speaking of which, I have some news. The State Accounting Board is reinstating my license and issuing a public statement clearing my name. Rex's confession exonerated me completely. I smiled, genuinely pleased. That's fantastic, Jennifer. You deserved better than what Rex put you through. We all did, but we survived and he didn't. That counts for something. After ending the call, I finished my drink and prepared to leave. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new challenges, and the ongoing work of rebuilding a life that had been nearly destroyed by betrayal. But tonight, I was content to sit in a familiar bar with a good friend, knowing that sometimes the good guys actually win. One more for the road, Jonesy asked. Why not? We're celebrating, after all. What exactly are we celebrating? I thought about that for a moment, considering everything that had happened over the past year. The betrayal, the investigation, the arrests, the trials, and finally the justice that had been served. We're celebrating the fact that actions have consequences, loyalty matters, and sometimes the universe actually makes sense. I'll drink to that. As Jonesy poured 2 more bourbons, I reflected on the lessons learned from my marriage's spectacular collapse. Trust was precious and easily broken. Betrayal revealed character in ways that ordinary life never could. And revenge, when it was really justice in disguise, could be deeply satisfying. Sabrina and Rex had gambled everything on their scheme, believing they were smarter and more ruthless than their victims. They'd been wrong on both counts. Now they would spend years paying for that miscalculation, while their intended victim rebuilt his life stronger than before. The rain had stopped by the time I left Murphy's, and the city streets gleamed under the streetlights. I walked to my car slowly, savoring the cool air and the sense of closure that had finally settled over the whole sordid affair. At home, I poured myself a glass of water and stood in the kitchen where Sabrina and I had shared thousands of meals over 12 years of marriage. The house felt different now, not empty, but peaceful, clean, ready for whatever came next. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, noting that I'd finally stopped thinking of it as our bedroom. It was mine now, along with everything else I'd worked to build and nearly lost to my wife's betrayal. Before turning off the lights, I checked my phone one last time. There was a text message from an unknown number. Congratulations on your victory. Justice served is justice earned. A friend. I smiled and deleted the message. In a city this size, word traveled fast when someone got what they deserved. Sabrina and Rex's downfall had been public and spectacular. A cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating your opponents and overestimating your own cleverness. As I settled into bed, I thought about the anniversary dinner that had started this whole chain of events. Sabrina had wanted to humiliate me, to show me how easily she could replace me with someone younger, richer, and more exciting. Instead, she'd revealed her true character and given me the motivation to destroy her carefully constructed scheme. The irony was perfect. In trying to celebrate the end of our marriage, she'd actually celebrated the beginning of her own destruction. And I'd been there to witness every moment of her fall from grace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities. But tonight, I was content to sleep in my own bed, in my own house, knowing that justice had been served and the future was mine to shape. Rex Mallory and Sabrina Grant had learned the hard way that betraying someone who made a living uncovering secrets was a game they couldn't win. And I had learned that sometimes the best revenge was simply letting people destroy themselves while you documented every step of their downfall. In the end, that was enough, more than enough.